The blue ceramic mug I used every Friday for charting was sitting on the kitchen counter with someone else's toothbrush inside it, and I just stood there with my keys in my hand, staring at it like if I stayed quiet long enough, the room might explain itself. My name is Greer. I am 31 and I am a pediatric occupational therapist. I had been living outside Denver for a little under a year by then, in a rented townhouse with my fiancé, Hayes. He worked in commercial roofing sales, which meant he could talk to anyone, diffuse anything, promise anything, and somehow make it sound responsible. That charm had impressed me when we met. It looked different once I lived with it. I had moved from Milwaukee after we got engaged, not because I was reckless, not because I thought love fixed everything. I moved because Hayes knew how to sound steady. He knew how to take my worst fears and answer them before I even finished speaking. I told him early that I needed a home to feel like a real home. Quiet mattered to me. Privacy mattered to me. I worked with children all week, many with sensory and regulation issues. And by Friday my brain felt like it had been scraped raw. I needed one room in our life that stayed predictable. He told me more than once that he understood. That Friday had already been bad. A boy on my caseload had bitten me hard enough to bruise through my sleeve. A mother had cried in the hallway after a progress review. I had driven home in freezing rain with a tension, headache pressing behind my left eye, and spent the whole ride telling myself I was less tired than I felt. Then I walked in and found my mug with a toothbrush in it. There was an air mattress box near the stairs. My office door was open. I never left it open. Inside, my desk had been shoved against the wall. One bookshelf was half empty, and the lamp my sister gave me had been moved to the floor beside a rolled sleeping bag. I remember the exact sensation that came over me. It was not anger first. It was that cold little drop in the stomach you get when you realize a conversation happened without you, and the evidence is already in your house. Hayes came in from the garage carrying a duffel bag and smiled too quickly. "Oh good, you're home." That was the first thing he said. Not hello, not can we talk, not I should have called. I set my keys down carefully. Why is there a toothbrush in my mug? He looked at the counter, then actually laughed once under his breath like that was the part I had chosen to notice. "Babe, my brother needed a place for a bit." My body stayed very still. I have learned that stillness can be louder than panic. "For a bit," I repeated. He put the duffel bag down by the stairs, just until they get back on their feet. I looked at the air mattress again, then at the bookshelf, then at him. "Who is they?" Hayes rubbed the back of his neck. "Callahan, Piper, and Piper's son. It's temporary. There are moments in a relationship where your mind moves faster than your face. In 1 second, I understood that this had already been decided, that my office had not been moved as a trial balloon, and that whatever he meant by temporary was going to be the kind of word people hide behind when they want your cooperation before they offer details. I said, "How temporary?" He did not answer right away, which was answer enough. "They had to be out by this weekend," he said finally. "The landlord sold the place." It happened fast. I looked past him toward the stairs. "And my office? We just need it for the kid. It makes the most sense." I almost smiled then, because that was the part that really got me. Not the air mattress, not even the furniture. It was how naturally he used the language of joint decision after making a solo one. I stepped into the office and saw the rest of it. My storage bins stacked in the closet, my printer unplugged, my therapy notes basket moved to the floor beside the window. The small gray daybed where I used to lie down when the headaches got bad had been stripped bare. On the desk was a legal pad in Hayes' handwriting, twin sheets, blackout curtains, pick up school registration packet, ask Greer if desk can fit in loft. Ask Greer. I stared at those words so long that Hayes came to stand in the doorway behind me. "I was going to tell you tonight," he said. I turned around. "After you moved my room?" "It's not just your room." The sentence landed softly, which somehow made it worse. No raised voice, no slammed door, just the gentle correction of a man who wanted credit for fairness while I stood in the remains of my own boundaries. I asked, "When were you planning to tell me that a child was moving into my workspace?" He sighed. "Can we not say it like that?" "How should I say it?" His jaw tightened. "My brother is going through something." I knew Callahan. Not well, but enough. He was older than Hayes by 5 years and wore hardship like a press badge. Every crisis arrived wrapped in a story about bad timing, bad bosses, bad luck, bad markets, people misunderstanding him. He was never loud. That was the trick. Men like that did not need volume. They survived on the social fact that everyone around them would rather absorb inconvenience than accuse them of taking advantage. Piper I had met twice. Polite, tired, hard to read. Her son, Jude, was 14 and had spoken maybe 12 words total around me. I said, "How long?" Hayes looked at the ceiling for half a second. "Maybe 6 weeks? Maybe less." My headache sharpened so suddenly I had to press my tongue against the back of my teeth to keep from showing it. 6 weeks. I worked 4 days in clinic and 1 from home. My charting day was not optional. My telehealth check-ins were not optional. My recovery routine after the health scare I had 3 months earlier was not optional either, though Hayes had started treating that one like a preference. I had told him after the hospital that I needed 2 things from him: if we were going to keep building a life together. No major decisions about our home without both of us. No volunteering my labor because he was uncomfortable saying no to family. He had taken my hand and said, "Done." I must have been quiet too long, because Hayes stepped closer and lowered his voice into that soothing register he used when he wanted me to accept a situation he had already endorsed. "You're making this bigger than it is." That sentence changed something in me. Not all at once, not dramatically, more like a soft internal click, the sound of one truth sliding into place beside another. Because if he had said, "I'm sorry," if he had said, "I panicked and handled it badly," if he had said, "I know this is your office and I should have asked," I might have still fought him, but I would have been fighting a problem. Instead, he was asking me to negotiate with a pattern. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. A family group chat I had been added to months earlier and mostly muted lit up with new messages. Hayes' mother had sent a photo of a casserole dish on a stovetop with the caption, "So grateful the boys always take care of each other. Proud of the home you two have made for family." Under it, Callahan had written, "We'll be there by Sunday night." Jude's excited about having his own room. My office. My pulse went slow and cold. If this story is already making you tense, go ahead and like, subscribe, and comment your city, state, country, or just your first name, alright? Now let me take you back. Because that was the moment I understood the office was not the first thing Hayes had quietly given away. It was just the first thing he had done that left visible marks. I did not answer the group chat. I set my phone face down on the desk and looked at Hayes. His own room. Hayes shifted his weight. It just means space. My mom says things. That room is where I work. You can work upstairs. Upstairs was our bedroom, the landing, and a narrow loft with enough space for a chair and a side table. No desk, no door, no privacy. The loft looked down into the living room, which now, apparently, was about to become a family shelter I had never agreed to run. I asked, "When did this start?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when did this plan start?" His eyes moved away from mine for 1 second, then back. That was enough. "Hayes," he exhaled. "A couple of weeks ago." The room went quiet in a strange way after that, as if even the rain against the windows had pulled back to listen. "A couple of weeks," I repeated. "I was trying to figure it out before I brought it to you." That would have sounded reasonable to someone who did not know him. It was one of Hayes' strongest habits, presenting deception as consideration. He never lied in wild, reckless ways. He lied in neat little administrative forms. He delayed, smoothed, rounded the edges. By the time the truth arrived, it was already carrying boxes into the house. I said, "So while I was talking to you about my charting setup last week, you already knew you were giving the room away." His jaw tightened. "I wasn't giving it away. You wrote down blackout curtains and school registration. They needed help, and I needed honesty." He looked irritated then, which almost made me laugh. The person who had moved my workspace involved his entire family, and apparently promised a teenager my office was now annoyed that I was being difficult about the details. "Can you have some compassion?" he asked. There it was, the moral turn, the part where my boundary became my flaw. I picked up the legal pad and read the list again. Twin sheets, blackout curtains, school registration packet, ask Greer if desk can fit in loft. "Did you really think this line made you consider it?" I asked softly. He stared at the pad. "I knew you'd be upset." That sentence lodged in me harder than I expected, not because it was shocking, but because it was clean. No confusion, no misunderstanding. He had known. He had just calculated that my anger would be easier to manage after the fact. I put the pad back down. I said, "I'm going to shower." He blinked. "That's it?" "No," I said. "That is what I'm doing next." He followed me halfway upstairs anyway, still talking. He did that when he sensed he was losing ground. More words. More tone control, more pressure disguised as calm. "We are not throwing them out." I did not say that. "They have nowhere to go." I did not say that either. "Then what are you saying?" At the top of the stairs, I turned and looked at him. "I'm saying you made a life decision that affects my work, my health, and my home. And you did it because you thought apologizing later would be easier than asking first." He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "You always make things sound so harsh." That one almost took my breath away. Not because it was cruel, because it was practiced. I took my shower, shut the bathroom door, and sat on the closed toilet for 10 full minutes before I even turned the water on. My hands were shaking by then, not from fear exactly, from that thin, humiliating kind of shock that comes when the thing hurting you is too socially acceptable to call abuse, and too intimate to dismiss as nothing. In the shower, I replayed the last few months with sudden clarity. The extra key he had copied for his mother after saying it was just for emergencies. The weekend his brother borrowed our SUV while Hayes was trying to help him out, and forgot to mention it to me until I came outside with groceries. The night Hayes volunteered me to help Piper update her resume because you're better with wording than I am. The way his family always thanked him for things that quietly became my burden. At first, each moment had seemed small, normal even, the sort of compromise adults make in relationships. Standing under hot water with my office half erased downstairs, I saw the pattern for what it was. Hayes did not break one promise. He built an entire system where his comfort came from my flexibility. When I came downstairs in pajamas, He was on the couch scrolling through his phone like the evening had leveled out. That told me something too. He thought the hardest part was over. He thought my silence meant I was adjusting. "Do you want dinner?" he asked without looking up. I almost admired the nerve. "No." He nodded once, still not looking at me, and that tiny dismissal made my next choice easier. I sat at the far end of the dining table with my laptop and opened the family chat from the beginning of the month. I was not snooping. I was reading a conversation I was already in, one I had muted because it was mostly recipes, football opinions, and Hayes' mother sending blurry photos of grocery store sales. Halfway up the thread, I found the first message that mattered. Callahan had written, "Landlord wants us out sooner than expected. Might need to get creative for a while." Hayes' mother had replied, "Family takes care of family." Then Hayes had responded, "We have the office and plenty of room to make it work. Not I'll talk to Greer. Not maybe. We have." I kept reading. A few days later, Piper had asked whether Jude would need to bring his desktop or if there was already a study set up. Hayes wrote, "Greer's desk is in there now, but I can move things around this weekend." I stared at that message until the words blurred. The strangest part was not the logistics. It was how casual he sounded, like I was furniture, like my presence in the room was temporary and movable, no more relevant than a lamp. Then came the first micro-twist. Farther down, from just 3 nights earlier, Piper had written, "I still feel bad about taking over her office." And Hayes had replied, "Don't. She'll grumble because change stresses her out, but she'll come around. Better to do it fast than drag it out." I put both hands flat on the table. Change stresses her out. Not because I work from home. Not because I had been in the hospital. Not because I had said clearly, repeatedly, over the course of our relationship, that being included in decisions is the difference between safety and chaos for me. No. In his version, I was just a difficult personality trait with a favorite room. I took screenshots, every relevant message, every date, every moment he spoke for me in the plural. Then I emailed them to myself and saved them into a folder labeled admin, because that was the kind of small practical choice women make when some part of us already knows the truth is going to matter later. Hayes glanced up from the couch. "What are you doing?" "Catching up on things." He seemed satisfied by that. He even smiled faintly, like we had entered the stage where I managed my feelings quietly, and he got to call the evening resolved. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Piper, separate from the family chat. "I know this is awkward. I didn't realize he hadn't fully talked it through with you. I'm sorry." I read it twice. Not because of the apology, because of the phrasing. "Hadn't fully talked it through. Not hadn't told you. Hadn't fully talked it through." I typed carefully. "What did he tell you he had talked through?" The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, came back. Then her reply landed. "That you were okay with us using the office because your clinic was cutting back your home hours anyway, and you said it would be good for you to be around more people after everything this fall." I felt the blood drain out of my face. Everything this fall, the hospital stay, my brief leave from work, the medication adjustment I had begged Hayes to keep private outside immediate family, because I did not want to become the fragile woman everyone discussed in lowered voices. I looked across the room at him. He was still scrolling. I texted back, "Thank you for telling me." Then I put the phone down and did not move for a full minute. The house had gone very still again, fridge humming, rain tapering off, Hayes breathing through his nose on the couch like a man inside a problem he still believed he controlled. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured myself water, and asked in the most ordinary voice I had used all night, "Did you tell Piper my clinic cut back my hours?" His head came up sharply. "What? Did you tell her I needed more people around after my hospital stay?" He set his phone down. "Why are you talking to Piper?" That was his answer. "Not no. Not I would never." "Why are you talking to Piper?" I said, "Did you?" He rubbed his face. "I might have said your schedule changed." My schedule did not change. It was just easier than explaining everything. Everything. I leaned against the counter because suddenly I needed the support. "What exactly is everything?" He looked frustrated again, as if precision itself was unfair. "That you've been overwhelmed since the fall," he said. "That being around family might actually be good for you." I was trying to make it make sense. There are humiliations that hit hard because other people witness them. Then there are humiliations that hit harder because no one does. The man I planned to marry had taken the most vulnerable season of my adult life, reduced it to a selling point, and used it to explain why I should lose my workspace to his family, and he still thought he was the reasonable one. I nodded once. "Okay." He watched me carefully then. "Okay?" "Yes," because something had changed again. Something more final. Until that moment, part of me still thought this might be a fight about logistics, honesty, respect, or maybe even couples therapy, if I forced enough truth into the room. But this was bigger. He had not just volunteered my office. He had volunteered my weakness, and he had done it in my name. I did not sleep in our bedroom that night, not because Hayes told me not to, because I wanted one full night without hearing him breathe like we were still a team. I took a blanket, went downstairs, and locked myself in the half-emptied office. The room smelled like dust and cardboard. My lamp was still on the floor. My printer cable trailed under the desk, like something unplugged mid-sentence. I sat on the stripped daybed frame, and looked around at the shape of my life after someone else had edited it. Then I opened my laptop and did the least dramatic thing I could think of. I made a list. Work equipment to move, medication drawer, insurance cards, lease portal login, joint account transfers from the last 6 months. The women I know who survive cleanly are never the loudest women in the room. They are the ones who keep receipts while everyone else keeps talking. By morning, I had not cried once. That did not mean I was not hurt. It meant hurt had turned into something colder and more useful. Hayes knocked on the office door around 7. "Can we talk?" I opened it because I wanted to see his face in daylight. He looked rough, but not wrecked, still operating from the assumption that this was salvageable if he found the right tone. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have worded it like that with Piper." I almost smiled. Not "I am sorry I exposed your medical history." Not "I am sorry I lied to them about your work." Worded it like that. I said, "Your brother and his family are still coming Sunday?" He blinked. "Yes." "And Jude still gets this room?" His shoulders loosened a little, as if we were moving toward practical matters at last. "Just until they find something," I nodded. "Then you need to make other arrangements." His face changed slowly. "What? For them?" I said. "Or for you? I don't really care which." He stared at me like I had suddenly started speaking in another language. "Greer. No. Come on. No." That word had so much less heat in it than I expected. It did not come out shaking. It did not come out tearful. It came out finished. He stepped into the doorway. "You cannot make me choose between you and my family." I looked at him for a long moment. "That is exactly what you already did," I said. "You just made the choice before asking me." He began pacing the hall outside the office, one hand on his hip. That familiar combination of injured and indignant. "This is not fair. They're in trouble, and I had a right to know before you turned my medical history into a group explanation for why I should give up my workspace." His head snapped toward me. "I did not turn it into anything." I held his gaze. "Then say exactly what you told them." He said nothing. That was the part people do not talk about enough. Silence is not neutral when truth is available. Silence is a shelter. I stepped past him, went to the kitchen and opened the lease portal on my phone. Our townhouse had been rented through a property company that handled transfers cleanly. I had looked it up at 2 in the morning. One tenant could submit notice. One tenant could request removal of self from renewal. There was also a link to available units in the same complex. Hayes saw the screen and his voice changed. "What are you doing?" "Being clear? Don't be ridiculous." That word. Ridiculous. As if I were overreacting to bad manners instead of responding to a man who had slowly trained himself to treat my consent like an obstacle. I called the leasing office when they opened. I put the phone on speaker. A woman named Marissa answered, bright and professional. I asked what it would take to transfer to a 1-bedroom in the same complex if one became available this month. Hayes went white. "Greer." I held up one finger and kept listening. "There was one opening," Marissa said. "Smaller unit, end building. Available the following week if paperwork was submitted by noon Monday." She explained the fees, the credit check, the utility transfer. I thanked her and told her I would be there in person before lunch. When I hung up, Hayes was furious in that tightly controlled way men get when they realize calm is no longer helping them. "You're seriously leaving over this?" I leaned against the counter and looked at him. "I'm leaving because this is not over one thing. This is the first time you made it impossible for me to pretend the pattern was smaller than it is." He laughed once, sharp and unbelieving. "So that's it? One hard family situation and you're done?" I said, "No. One hard family situation would have started with a conversation." The major reveal did not come from him confessing some hidden affair or secret debt. It came from something much more ordinary, and to me, much worse. He said, "I knew if I asked you first, you'd say no." There it was. No confusion, no panic, no noble intentions ruined by timing. He knew. He knew my answer. He knew my boundary. And instead of respecting it, he worked around me. Every small compromise from the last year rearranged itself in my head right then. Like furniture finally pushed into the correct shape. The extra key, the borrowed car, the volunteered help, the decisions made in comforting half-sentences. He had not been failing to understand me. He had been managing me. That was the truth. And once I had it, I did not need anything else from him. I packed while he called me selfish, then hurt, then cold, then impossible. The order changed every half hour, but the meaning stayed the same. He wanted me back in the role where his discomfort became my moral responsibility. By 10, I had my medication, work files, laptop, clothes, and the framed photo of my grandmother from the office shelf he had already half cleared. I loaded everything into my car. At 11, Piper called. I answered because I wanted one thing in this mess to remain clean. Her voice was careful. "I think I should tell you something." I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and listened. She said she had not wanted to move in. She and Hayes had spoken directly 2 weeks earlier because Callahan was embarrassed to ask. Hayes had told her not to worry, that I was all heart once people were in front of me, and that if he handled it before I got in my head, it would be easier on everyone. I closed my eyes. There are sentences you never fully forget after someone says them about you. Not because they are dramatic, because they are efficient. He had built an entire strategy out of my decency. I thanked her for telling me. I meant it. Then I drove to the leasing office, signed for the 1-bedroom, and spent that weekend moving with the kind of focus that feels almost holy when your mind finally stops arguing with your own reality. Hayes called 31 times between Friday afternoon and Sunday night. I know, because my phone grouped them after a while. Voicemails, long texts, short ones, apologies mixed with blame, memories mixed with pressure, promises mixed with the same old insistence that I was making a temporary problem permanent. I read all of it once. Then I sent one message. You did make it permanent, just not in the way you thought. After that, I blocked him. The small final twist came on Monday morning. I was in my new apartment, sitting cross-legged on the floor, because my furniture had not all arrived yet, drinking coffee from a paper cup. It was quiet in the best way. Clean quiet. Chosen quiet. My phone buzzed with an email from Hayes' mother. Not angry, not accusatory, just brief. I did not realize you hadn't agreed. I am sorry. I read it twice. Then I closed it without replying. Because for the first time in a long time, I understood something clearly. An apology is not the same thing as safety. By the end of that week, my desk was set up by a window in the smaller apartment. My lamp was back where I wanted it. My blue ceramic mug was on the shelf above the printer, holding pens. Because I had thrown the toothbrush away, I did not feel triumphant. I felt accurate, and after months of being edited inside my own life, accuracy felt like freedom. I never went back to that townhouse. I never married Hayes. The last thing I took from that house was not my desk or my files, or the gray daybed he thought was easy to move. It was my willingness to call disrespect love just because it arrived in a gentle voice. Sometimes the thing that ends a relationship is not cruelty. It is clarity. And once I had that, I locked my own door and never handed him the key again. I want to step out of the story for a second and say this. Some of the worst betrayals do not look dramatic at first. That is why people stay confused for so long. It is not always yelling. It is not always cheating. Sometimes it is somebody deciding that your limits are negotiable if they can explain them well enough. That kind of thing gets inside your head, because on the surface they can still look helpful, reasonable, generous, calm, and you start wondering if maybe you are the difficult one. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you are making too much out of something small. But the truth is, home is not just walls. It is the place where your no is supposed to mean something. And when somebody keeps finding polite little ways around your no, that does something to your nervous system. It teaches you that love means adaptation without safety. It teaches you to prepare yourself before you even walk through your own front door. That is not a small thing. And honestly, I think a lot of people do not leave the first big betrayal. They leave the moment they finally see the pattern. That is the real break. That quiet click inside. The one where your body understands before your mouth does. Once that happens, the grief is real, but so is the relief. And that relief matters. I knew something was wrong when I came home and found my toothbrush sitting in my coffee mug, and my home office looked like someone had already decided I didn't need it anymore. I lived with my fiancé, and that room was not just extra space. It was where I worked, where I recovered, where I went when life got too loud. I had told my fiancé from the beginning that I needed one thing to feel safe in a relationship. No major decisions about our home without both of us. So when I saw my desk shoved against the wall, my printer unplugged, and an air mattress box by the stairs, I asked one question. Who is staying here? My fiancé acted like it was no big deal. My future brother-in-law, his wife, and her teenage son needed a place for a while. Just temporary. Just family helping family. Then I found out the teenager was getting my office. Not our guest room, not the couch. My office. I asked how long, and my fiancé stalled just long enough for me to know I was already trapped. Weeks. Maybe longer. And the worst part was that none of this had actually happened fast. It had been planned for days. Maybe longer. I just hadn't been included. That night, I checked the family group chat and found the truth sitting there in plain sight. My fiancé had already told everyone we had room. My fiancé had already promised the office. My fiancé had already made me sound like I was on board. I started taking screenshots. Then my future sister-in-law texted me privately and said she felt bad because she thought my fiancé had already fully discussed it with me. So I asked one careful question. What exactly did my fiancé tell you? And that was when everything changed. My fiancé had told them my work from home hours were being cut back anyway, that I needed more people around after my hospital stay, that giving up my office would actually be good for me. I had never said any of that. The person I planned to marry did not just give away my space. My fiancé used the weakest season of my life to sell the decision for me. My recovery became a talking point. My privacy became a convenience. The next morning, my fiancé said I was overreacting. Then my fiancé finally admitted the part that mattered most. I knew if I asked, you would say no. That was it. That was the whole relationship in one sentence. So I didn't scream. I called the leasing office. Found a one-bedroom in the same complex, packed my work files, my medicine, and my lamp, and left before the family ever arrived. My fiancé thought I was fighting over a room. I was leaving over the moment I realized my no only mattered when it matched what my fiancé wanted.